Welcome, Oklahoma. 59-20 over West Virginia after two straight losses to Oklahoma State and Kansas. My name is Brandon Drum. I'm here with Parker Thune, Coach Bryan Clinton, and you're listening to and or watching the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners Postgame Podcast, powered by Olipop.
No, I don't have an Olipop.
Well, it's 2:00 in the morning, so
that is true.
I think you'd be all right.
And my latest shipment hasn't gotten in yet.
I have an Olipop in here. It's a frozen Olipop from OnQ.
Okay, take your word for
it. Whatever. All right. Don't go to OnQ and try to find them. You won't, guys. It was a joke. So Oklahoma won 59-20 today, guys. We were talking off air before we got on here, and I think you got to start here. We'll get into how great they were and blah, 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 all that crap. This damn team's an enigma, bro. My bros. Like, I can't figure that. I can't figure them out.
Oh, well, like, listen, Brandon. It's less of an enigma than you think. And let me tell you the reason why is because we saw it. It's not as if we are seeing a different team week in and week out. We saw the exact same team for 6 games, then a completely different team for 3 games. And then tonight we saw the same team that we saw for the first 6 games again.
I think that's the definition of enigma, though. Like, you just saw.
No. I don't think they're an enigma.
A third of their games, we didn't know who they were.
Correct. But I think it says something that all of those games happened in succession and in isolation. So I'm not sure what happened over the bye week to this football team, but they hit some doldrums. And whatever the root cause, whatever you chalk it up to, that ultimately is when we look back on this 2023 season, we will look at that 3-game stretch out of the bye week, wonder what the heck happened. And I think we will look back on it as the stretch that defined Oklahoma's season, because Bryan and I were talking as we were sitting waiting for our food in the wee hours of this Sunday morning that we're sitting here recording this podcast, and talking about the fact that, heck, Oklahoma didn't even need to. Well, I guess in essence, they could have afforded to screw up against either Kansas or Oklahoma State. They just couldn't screw up against both. They screwed up against both, and now they don't control their own destiny anymore. And now, obviously, they're playing from behind in the Big 12 championship race, have no hope of competing in the college football playoff. But if not for that odd 3-game stretch, and there's no other word for it, it was just odd. It was baffling. It was befuddling. Well, I guess there are several other words. All of them kind of have the same definition, though. That 3-game stretch was not the Oklahoma football team that we have seen throughout the remainder of this season. And this game tonight, I mean, the Sooners looked vintage offensively and defensively.
Yeah. Real quick, to me, you said vintage, and what Parker means, he's not talking vintage 2022, vintage 2023 offense. We haven't seen anything like what we saw tonight since Caleb Williams was in Norman. And that's a fact. That's a fact. Outside of the Arkansas State game, right? Because, and what I'm talking about is how well they ran at the running back position, how well Dylan ran the ball, how well they threw the ball.
That game tonight, here's kind of what I'm getting at. When I say vintage, I think what comes to mind for me is that felt like watching Oklahoma in 2019, because the offense was dominant. The defense wasn't terrible. It wasn't great, but for the most part, like, they did what they needed to do. They got the job done. Weren't spectacular, but they got the job done. And to me, that's what it felt like watching this game today. It harkened back to kind of that one year where you had the overlap between, okay, Oklahoma's on an upward swing defensively, and the offense is still just as dominant as it has ever been in the history of the program. The Sooners had no trouble moving the ball tonight, no trouble finding the end zone. It was effortless. And honestly, and we'll get into this a little bit more, it feels weird to say this. They could have been a lot better offensively tonight. Like there were a lot of things left on the table. But again, like 2019 to me is, I think that team, when that team was clicking and they were firing on all cylinders and they were playing their best ball, that was the most dominant OU football team that I had witnessed since 2008, when obviously, I mean, you're talking about maybe the greatest team that never won a national championship that year. But
more dominant than 2017 when they were clicking?
Yes.
Bryan, I want to hear, do you agree with that? 2017 was dominant.
I don't want to get sidetracked.
No. This is a good topic. No, it's a great topic though. Like that's a really good topic, because when you look at how complete of a game they played, you have to go back and you got to find, is it 2019? Was it 2017 that you saw a complete team? Like when I think of it, I think of Ohio State, Oklahoma. Oklahoma was so dominant on both sides of the ball in that game in Columbus. And obviously, OU was more explosive versus West Virginia, but you were on the road playing the number 2 team in the country. Excuse me. To me, that team was more of what you're talking about. But as far as like since then, I totally agree with 2019, because when you look back at that second half in Waco, Parker, that's more of what you saw. The tight end was used. The running game was they were running QB powers with Dylan Gabriel, just like you would with Jalen Hurts. He's not as effective as Jalen Hurts was, because nobody's as effective as Jalen Hurts with a QB power, QB counter. But it was the same concept. It was the same balance is more of what I was getting at. Like very balanced, very Jeff Levy called a hell of a game. I think that to me, I think is the clear domino that we got to talk about more than anything. That dude was in his bag today.
Yeah, he coached like he was pissed off, which makes sense. But I mean, let's not bury the lead here. Drake Stoops deserves a statue. Give the man a statue.
Absolutely.
Did y'all know that Dylan Gabriel was the first person to have 5 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns since 2012 in all of college football? Last person was Tajh Boyd. Tajh Boyd.
I can believe that.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. That's really cool. And the fact that it's a guy that Brent Venables was on the sidelines for back then. Pretty cool.
But anyways, back to Drake Stoops there.
Yeah.
He does deserve a statue. What when you think of Drake Stoops down the line and the season's over, he's in the NFL, he's a slot receiver for the Patriots, because we know that's where he's headed.
Well, if Bill Belichick gets retained.
Belichick's still there, obviously, but yeah, he's just token Patriot, right? How in the lures of Sooner legacy, how is he going to be remembered?
Bryan and I were talking earlier tonight, and I think Bryan has the perfect answer. He's got the perfect answer for you, because we were talking about Drake Stoops. We were talking about how he'll be remembered. I mean, what he is for this OU football program in his 6th year. What a crucial part of their identity he is. And I think Bryan hit the nail on the head with a lot of what he was saying. So, Bryan, reprise those thoughts, if you will.
Drake is as much a Youngstown kid as his dad is. That's exactly that. He is a guy that has spent 6 years working his tail off and taking none of it for granted, would not have it any other way, and has made a name for himself based on the hard work and the dedication that he's put into to building himself into what he is at Oklahoma. And that's exactly what his dad did whenever he came in and turned around the program. And so I think that's why whenever you said that, whenever you heard guys say that his comments this week galvanized the team, it's because when Drake speaks, it's just like when Bob had something to say. You listen, and you know that this is coming from a place of, I worked my butt off to get here, and I know what it takes. And that's, I'm not just going to tell you what it takes to get there. I'm going to pick up my part of it, and I'm going to help you carry it there. And he's done that. And I think that's probably what he's going to be remembered for in the future. And again, the leadership and the other intangibles that he brings to the field, just not just falling forward and always finding a way to be open, but being the guy that lifts that wide receiver room whenever things aren't particularly going well at other places. That's what he's done. And it's been something he's done for years now.
The last 2 weeks for Drake Stoops, he has caught 22 passes for 298 yards, 4 touchdowns.
Wow.
Tonight, he went 10 for 164 and the hat trick, 3 trips to the end zone. I mean, he I thought he had a career day last week, which, to be fair, at that point he probably had. And then he went and one-upped himself. And I think it's all so beautiful and so perfect because of that soundbite that went viral earlier this week, where he stands there in front of reporters and said, like, of course there's something left to play for. What do you mean? I bust my tail for this program and have every day for 6 years. Yeah, I got a ton to play for. And then it was in that moment that your appreciation for the way that Drake Stoops embodies OU football deepened. Mm-hmm. And then everything he said on that Monday evening, he went out tonight and backed up.
Oh, yeah.
And that was really cool to see.
Yeah, he was. There was a point in the game, I think it was early on, where I was like, dude, Drake is like quiet right now. Like, it was early in the first few drives. He didn't I think he got a screen, right? And I think he got like a little first down on like a 3rd and 5, and they threw it to him to make a point. It was almost identical to what they did at 4th and 5 or whatever against Oklahoma State. Not so much, but it was similar type of scheme. And then it was just quiet after that, like for a little bit. And you were like, okay, he may not go off, because there was Nick Anderson. It was Jalil Farouk, but it was mostly Gavin Sawchuk, Dylan Gabriel, just kind of running the ball. And then he gets that pass over the middle, cuts back and forth, and Jalil Farouk kind of carries him the last 2 yards into the end zone. And from that point on, it was the Drake Stoops show. Like, it was on at that point.
I will say, I do think Drake Stoops bulldozed his way through for those last few yards, more so than Jalil Farouk carried him.
Well, he got a little, but I'm giving Jalil a little credit here for being a good team player there.
Yeah, whether Farouk was there or not, Drake was scoring on that play. He was getting to the goal line.
It was unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. Like, that guy, like I said, that at that point, it was the Drake Stoops show. Like, you knew when he dropped back to pass, 12 was getting the ball. He was either going to 12, 481. Like, that was it tonight. And that's all they needed, because 27, Mr. Gavin Sawchuk, my, oh my, have they found themselves a running back. And not just a running back. He's running with some ferocity now, like with some power. He's breaking through those, like last week against Bedlam. There were a couple of plays that he could have broken for like 70 yards, little shoelace tackles. He didn't pick his feet up high enough when he was running. And you can tell he's just kind of getting back in the groove. And what I thought was really interesting, Parker, is Levy was talking, and they asked about the media, all the beat. We asked about Gavin Sawchuk, and he said exactly what we reported on OU Insider week 3, when everybody's like, where is Gavin Sawchuk at? You know what he said? He said, and I quote, it took him a long time to get back into football shape with the injury that he had with his hamstring, which is exactly what we reported when everybody was mad that he wasn't getting carries or he didn't have that same burst and whatnot. He was struggling with the hamstring. He's healthy, and he might be one of the top. I mean, where would you rank him in the annals of Big 12 right now as far as we all know Ollie Gordon's number 1. You think he's the 3rd best running back in the league right now?
Yeah.
I might agree with that. 3rd or 4th. Yeah, I might agree.
RJ Harvey,
clear top 2 are Ollie Gordon.
RJ Harvey's
RJ
up there too. Yeah.
Yeah. After that, I mean, well,
I could
Brooks.
say Devin.
You got Brooks.
I forget about Jonathan Brooks, even if I say that.
Well, and Taj
he's top
Brooks.
5. He's probably top 5 then. Devin, yeah.
I don't even know that I would put him in the top 5 right now.
You don't think so?
Like,
actually, now that I think about it, Taj Brooks is up there too. I mean, he's like 4th in the country in rushing yards. So,
okay. Well,
I mean, anyways, I mean,
but still, to do what he's doing right now.
Yes.
Over the last month, like the guy had like 30 yards, and then all of a sudden, he's got almost 300 yards rushing.
Yep.
So if he doesn't end up with 700 yards by the end of the bowl season, I think, what does he have right now? Do we have the stats? I think Mike Houck sent him out. I just haven't looked at him yet. Where he stands as far as yardage goes on the year. But yeah, he should be getting close to, if not near 300. And if he just averages 130 yards over the next 3 games, he should be pushing 650 plus.
He currently has 373 yards on the season.
Oh yeah, that dude's getting 700 easy. Okay. There you go, man. And he's doing that in like a matter of like 6 games.
Yep.
That's a good average, guys. That's a good. When you say like he's building to a really strong first year in the SEC at this point.
Oh, absolutely. If he can stay healthy, yes. He's a game breaker. I think that's really what I think that's the difference. I love what Tawee Walker brings to the table just as a downhill runner. But Gavin Sawchuk is legitimately a guy that can take it anytime you put the football in his hands.
Yeah.
And so that's probably been that, and the lack of usage at tight end have been like the 2 biggest, for lack of a better term, because I'm tired, bugaboos that we've heard from the fan base is those 2 things. So Sawchuk's definitely got that part figured out.
What for you all? When Oklahoma's successful, and they have been, they were successful last week offensively for the most part. I think they averaged, Venable said, 7.7 yards a carry anytime or play. Anytime you're averaging 7.7 yards a play, you should probably win the ball game. Mm-hmm. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Do you see what they've been doing the last month offensively? The defense has had some issues a little bit, making, I guess, stops when needed at times. But moving forward, what's more important, the tight end or Gavin Sawchuk? Stogner or Sawchuk? Like, who do you think you need to get going more, the running game, or do you need to get 4 or 5 targets to Stogner to get other aspects going? You call the tight end the most impactful and most versatile position on the field. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to assume, Bryan, you think tight end is more important? Like,
I would say, whenever I say versatile, I mean, I think that's a position that he's very integral to every play in Jeff Levy's scheme. Just as far as having him open over the middle of the field in an RPO setting, or having him occupying linebackers in that sense, or what he brings to the table as far as a blocker in the running scheme. I just think that the balance has been a little bit off. I would say that as far as what's more important, though, I think it's Gavin Sawchuk getting going.
I would 100% agree. I think Sawchuk is easily, and there's no knock on Stogner and no knock on the tight end, but having a guy like that out of the backfield whose potential you are progressively unlocking, it's going to do wonders for this offense. And I don't want to get caught looking too far down the road, but man, this offense could be ridiculous next year. And they're going to, especially now that Sawchuk is really hitting his stride, they're going to be a good offense down the stretch here in 2023. But you look ahead to 2024, Jackson Arnold at the controls, Sawchuk presumably heading up the committee in the backfield, Nick Anderson on one side, Andrell Anthony on the other. You throw in all the gadget players that Oklahoma can roll out there, all the wide receivers that are log jammed on this depth chart. And then I think the only thing that's missing at that point is got to have a quality tight end, whether you get one via the portal or whether Devon Mitchell just comes in and is that dude, or maybe Caden Helms coming off an injury really takes a step forward. But you can get the tight end situation figured out, and I have it on good authority that Oklahoma is going to pursue at least one and perhaps two tight ends in the portal this offseason. If you can get that tight end situation squared away, man, this offense is going to be fun in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, talent-wise, 24 might be one of the most talented they've seen since
17.
You think it's that far? 2018 is where I was kind of going, but that 2018 team was probably the most talented offense I've seen outside of not having Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
They were loaded.
This episode of the OU Insider Under the Visor podcast is brought to you in part by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. So instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Testing your skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. I'm feeling lucky this weekend. I like former Sooner Marvin Mims to come up with a long touchdown reception for the Denver Broncos. Thus, I'm going with Mims to end up with more than his projected receiving yards total. Go to prizepicks.com/insider and use code INSIDER for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/insider and use code INSIDER for a first deposit match up to $100, and use my entry or create your own. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. This episode of the OU Insider Under the Visor podcast is sponsored in part by BetterHelp. It's only natural that as the holiday season approaches, it might give rise to emotions, thoughts, memories, feelings that you may not even be sure how to process. This time of year can be a lot, and it's natural to feel some sadness or even some anxiety about it. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot amidst all of the stress and change. It can give you something to look forward to, make you feel grounded, and to give you the tools to manage everything going on in your life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/OU Insider today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/OU Insider.
Would that's probably a fair statement. I mean, You're losing Drake, but you're gonna bring back Andrew Anthony. You're gonna have Jalil Farouk. You're gonna have Petaway. Where Drake is at, I'm assuming Gavin Freeman's gonna fill into that spot and be that guy, right? Like that's what we all assume.
I don't know how Emmett's going to keep all these receivers happy, man.
I don't know.
I mean, you want to talk
That's a
about
great
first
question.
world problems. That's the epitome right there. But like, you think about what that wide receiver rotation could look like next year and how many guys that are going to deserve snaps that there's just going to be no room for.
Mhm.
Who do you leave out? Who, if you're wanting to play 7 receivers, I mean, you roll it off Nick Anderson, Farouk, Anthony, Jaden Gibson, Gavin Freeman. Okay, that's 5 right off the top there. Then Jacquez Petaway, Brennan Thompson. You have JJ Hester, who's been seeing more playing time as of late. LV Bunkley Shelton. That 5-fold group of freshmen coming in. Hey, it is going to be an all-out logjam at wide receiver, even more so than it is right now.
And you didn't even bring up the transfer portal, the potentials of that. So I mean that shows you again first world problems, as Parker said, and then you go to the other side of the field. Is I think at this point it's fairly evident after tonight that I'm going to say it. I don't really give a damn if it pisses off Oklahoma State fans. I don't give a damn if it pisses off Kansas fans. Danny Stutzman plays and he's healthy in those 2 games. Yeah, OU's still undefeated. Am I wrong?
I don't think you were wrong. And again, not to spend a post-game podcast looking ahead to the 2024 season, but
no, it's fair right now. Like
with as
exciting.
Excellent as Kip Lewis has been as of late, you can make the argument that Oklahoma is going to have as good a 1-2 punch at linebacker in the nation next year if you get Danny Stutzman back. Because Kip Lewis has been a dude.
And Kobe McKenzie's coming on strong too. I mean, that guy, they're going to be loaded at linebacker for the foreseeable future.
We got to see Samuel Masigo tonight.
Yep.
He played good ball. Brent Venables is very, very high on him. Talked about him in postgame.
I missed it. What did he say? Because I was trying to get the quotes up.
I can't recall what exactly he said, so I'm paraphrasing, but he just said we expect Sammy to play some really good ball here at OU.
Plus, you get Justin Harrington back at the cheetah position, and I mean, you're talking.
I forgot about that. Holy crap!
About having some real. I mean, yeah. Anyways,
and that's not to mention like the safety position. You're bringing in Boganowski. You're bringing in Jaden Hardy. You're bringing in Reggie Powers, and then on top of that, you have potential of Billy Bowman returning. You've got Peyton Bowen. Be healthy. Robert Spears Jennings, who is coming on like a wildfire right now.
He plays the wood, man.
Yeah,
he did it a couple times tonight.
He brings it, man. And it's starting to get really interesting. I think the biggest question for me on the defensive side is what is to come of Jaron Kanak at this point. Like for somebody that followed Brent Venables and like almost forced him to take him at Oklahoma because he didn't want to pull him from Clemson because he loved BV so much. To be in the situation he's at right now, it's going to be interesting to see if there's. Now, I don't think he transfers after this season. But as things are trending right now, and it's unfortunate because he's a good player. He was really good to start the season. And then all of a sudden, after that Texas game, some point in the middle of the Kansas game, he lost it.
Yeah. Well, and
we haven't seen any. He's not the same guy.
Well, and we've just gotten to the point where you legitimately cannot justify having him on the field over Kip Lewis
Or even
unless
Kobe McKenzie at that point.
unless Lewis is just dog tired. Because like if you have Danny Stutzman at 100% and Kip Lewis at 100%, those are the two linebackers you want on the field right now.
Mhm.
Yep.
Regardless of the circumstance.
And we talked about that because we asked, right? Like we talked about on the previous podcast, previous lives, even instant reactions where we were saying, okay, when Stutzman comes back, you need to play Kip Lewis and him together because those two are really good. And Danny's already been working at the Mike backer to an extent through practices. And BV said Danny's one of the few guys on the defense that can play multiple positions and do it at an elite level. And you saw it tonight. I'm going to play the what if game here. What if Stutzman comes back next year? You said they would be one of the best tandems in the country. What does that do for Oklahoma's front seven? And how good can the defense be in the future with what we see roster-wise, with what we saw tonight, and what we feel is about to happen moving forward?
Well, I think naturally the ceiling is very, very high for this Oklahoma defense in 2024 if you get Stutzman back next year, because he's the best player on your football team right now. And just having dudes like that at linebacker that can impact the game in so many ways when you're playing defense, can come up and stuff the run, who can drop back into coverage and make plays, who can diagnose at the line of scrimmage, make checks, make calls, just kind of be the brain, if you will, of the body that is the defense, then yeah, it just you feel so much better about Oklahoma and what they can be defensively in 2024 with Danny Stutzman than without Danny Stutzman. And all is not lost if Stutzman decides to go to the pros, but kind of goes without saying that when you have a dude that good and a dude that is the heart and soul of your defense like that, like you want to keep him around as long as possible. And
it also depends on who you pick up in the transfer portal along the defensive line and how quickly those young guys coming in are going to be ready to take the role, because you've got a lot of guys on the defensive front that may or may not be gone after this year. So that'll obviously play a role into it as well. But
how many will be? You got Bothroyd,
Kelly,
you got Coe.
Is Terry gone, or does he have another year?
He's got another year.
Got another year.
That helps.
I mean, I think those are the only three, right?
And Grayson Halton, the way that he's looked the last couple of games, is going to be.
Those are the only three, right? Those are the only three that lose on the front, right?
Marcus Stripling,
Jonah
Stripling,
Laulu as well.
I guess, yeah, they got five.
Yeah, they got some guys to replace.
Yeah, they got some guys replaced, but I mean, David Stone's going to start next year. I think we all can kind of.
Oh wow,
see.
You're going there, huh?
You don't think so?
I don't know what the room is going to look like, so.
Yeah, it's fair. I guess what I want to ask is, betting man. If you're a betting man right now, and I said you got to bet, you have to wager on Bowman and Stutzman staying or going, which way would you lay your money on? With both?
Both of them or separately?
Both. Like separately, but both.
I would say Stutzman stays and Bowman goes.
I think they both stay.
I think if anybody's going to go, it's going to be Stutzman. I think Bowman returns. Mainly because I think his girlfriend has another year, correct? Am I wrong on that? Like, she's got 2 more years?
Jada? No, I think this is Jada's last season.
She wasn't 2020?
I don't believe so. No, I think that entire class of girls this is their senior year.
Was she 21 or 2020?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
Hey, in tangentially related news, guys, Dylan Gabriel broke a school record tonight.
Oh yeah, that happened.
Yeah, he's pretty
Dylan
good.
Gabriel accounted for 8 freaking touchdowns tonight. And what's wild, guys, is that he was prolific tonight. He was spectacular tonight, statistically, that is. And yet it was far from his best game, in my opinion, as an Oklahoma Sooner. Dylan missed a lot of throws tonight. Mm-hmm. They were either just off target or incomplete. And granted, most of those came in the first half. So by the time the second half rolled around and he really started hitting his stride, he kind of forgot it. But the point stands. Dylan Gabriel went for 473 total yards and 8 touchdowns tonight, and he still could have played a lot better.
That's scary, man. Yeah, he missed a few deep passes. He missed a few throws across the middle, obviously. And then he missed, I think we all kind of got worried. His first pass was to Drake, right? And it was a skip pass.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody in the press box, I know Jesse and I looked at each other and we're like, oh. Because they just scored. West Virginia just scored. You've got to go make a play. But then he finally, he got the first down on the very next play. But that was kind of one of those moments where like, okay, this is kind of a big deal to start that way. And then all of a sudden he got hot. And he didn't get hot because he was throwing the ball. He got hot because he was using his legs and he let the game come to him. And you got to give Levy credit there, man. You really do, because he could have just started throwing and throwing and throwing and throwing. Instead, he went, you know what? I'm going to be patient. I'm going to let the game come to Sawchuk. I'm going to let the game come to Dylan Gabriel. And then we're going to start throwing it. Because a lot of times, spread offensive coordinators, if you look at, we saw it with Lincoln Riley, Muleshoe, if you will. They get away from the run game because they get impatient. They want to get that big play. Like, it hasn't happened. Why hadn't that big play happened? And since the big play didn't happen, there they go. Now they're going to try to force the issue instead of just being steady Freddy and keep, running the ball, using the play action, taking the dinks and the dunks, and then taking your shot when it's there and not forcing it. And tonight, I don't think Levy forced anything, and I think that really helped Gabriel be comfortable.
Yeah.
Y'all agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Game flow, the game flow today for the offense was like we haven't seen since they played a Tulsa or a
Iowa State.
Arkansas. Yeah, Iowa State. Yeah. I mean, that was the last time it really felt like the offense flowed, and it felt like a concerted effort. I know that obviously Jeff Lebby is not searching the bowels of Twitter trying to find the next great scheme that he's going to use week to week, but it did seem
just
like
come to OU Insider, we'll help you out.
Yeah, I do think that there was a concerted effort on the offensive staff's part to do some things that Oklahoma fans and or maybe people in the media like us that have just we've been talking about the last several weeks. It was getting the tight end going. It was keeping Dylan Gabriel comfortable and actually dialing up some quarterback run. There were some designed quarterback runs tonight that we didn't see last week. So he got back to that, obviously. And the run game really benefited from some more gap scheme stuff tonight. And it looked like they were running things that it felt as if tonight was more of this is what we do well, we know it, and that's what we're going to stick to. It didn't feel like there was a lot of gadget plays. You know what I mean?
Which again is all we've been asking for.
Correct.
Guys, from this offense is stick with what works. And they did that tonight. And it was a gorgeous offensive performance. I mean, phenomenal They could have scored 70, maybe 80 if they'd wanted to. And even so, again, I'll go back to it. I can think off the top of my head of several throws that Dillon Gabriel should have made and didn't. He threw one way behind Nick Anderson. He threw one way behind Drake Stoops. He sailed one to Austin Stogner that might have gone for 6. He one-hopped that very first throw, like you mentioned, Brandon. And again, when you consider the fact that this was a record-breaking night for Gabriel, 473 total yards, 5 touchdowns to the air, 3 more on the ground. And you are mindful of the fact that he still did not play his best football game. It makes you wonder if we see that game that Jeff Lebby called in any of the last 3 weeks, or all of them for that matter, what is the narrative with this football team right now? How many points do they rack up in Lawrence and in Stillwater? How lopsided are those football games? I would say beyond a shadow of a doubt, OU wins them. I don't know by how much, but I think they win them. And are we talking about a program right now that is in the same conversation as Ohio State and Georgia?
Michigan.
Let me answer that with asking you a question, because I think the flip side of the coin is, if that version of Dillon Gabriel shows up in the Cotton Bowl, it goes to show you how far the offense as a whole has come since the Cotton Bowl. I know that they've gone through some things, but if that version of Dillon Gabriel shows up in the Cotton Bowl, they probably don't win that game. What I'm saying is, he missed throws today that he didn't miss in that game.
No, yeah, it's true.
And I think that you're seeing the sum of the parts with Gavin Sawchuk coming on and Stogner taking on a bigger role, and the offensive line starting to find some confidence in what they're running. I think it comes to show you, as unfortunate as it is, if he would have played those last couple, if the offense would have looked that way the last few weeks, I don't think there's any question. It would be a totally different conversation coming into this week. But I think you can at least say the offense, the sum of the parts has gotten better, which is good.
So, yeah, if the Dillon Gabriel that was at the Red River is combined with the running game of Gavin Sawchuk and the ability to use the tight end correctly, I think this team is one of the top 5, 6, 7 teams in the country.
Yeah.
But you, me, everybody can't guarantee that's what's going to happen or show up on a given basis, right? Like game by game, the reason I asked the question about it, the enigma to open up, was because we don't know. Like most teams, Alabama's going to come out, they're going to be a certain way.
Yeah.
Michigan's going to come out, they're going to be a certain way on offense and on defense. With Oklahoma still early on in Brent Venables' tenure, it's a crapshoot, guys. Like, they're either going to be really, really good, or they're going to be good, and their good isn't good enough to hold on. Their good allows other teams to build confidence and stay in the game and play with them down to the wire. And when they're really good, they can compete with anybody in the country.
I truly do think, and who knows, maybe they go out to BYU next weekend, and
Atlantic.
it's the same football it's the same football team that we saw against UCF and Kansas and Oklahoma State, and they regress again, and then we have a legit Jekyll and Hyde act on our hands. But I truly do believe that the Sooners will win their final 2 games of the regular season, and B, we will forever look back on this 2023 campaign for Oklahoma and wonder, how in the heck did they screw that up?
No,
Straight up.
that was going to be something I was going to ask you guys. Like, when we look back on this team, what do you think of them if they win out? Let's say they get lucky and they win the Big 12. Something falls into place. Oklahoma State or Texas loses and they get to walk. They backdoor themselves in the Big 12 and they win it. It's still going to be somewhat of a disappointing season because of how things started out. They were 6-7 last year. Totally get it. But OU fans know this more than the national media because they just look at the record and they look at it as 6-7. That 6-7 team was more like an 11-2 team because they blew games in the last minute of the ball game. It's almost they're better across the board in every statistical category this year. By leaps and bounds, they're better. But they were 7-0 and number 5 in the country, looking to go into the playoff and make a playoff run not 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And now you're staring with the door just kind of cracked looking in at the Big 12 championship game. Can we come in? Are we allowed to come in yet? No, not yet. Okay.
Yeah,
because Texas and Oklahoma State are still playing in there.
You talk about 6-7, Brandon, and again, you look back on that 6-7 season, and you're like, okay, it could have been a lot better. Probably should have been a lot better. But even so, you're like, okay, what's the ceiling? 11-2, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, 11-2, maybe you play in / win a New Year's Six bowl at that point, but you're not talking about a championship team by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
I think you will be able to look back on this 2023 team and legitimately have an argument. Okay, I don't know if this team wins a championship in 2023, but they at the very least could have made the playoff, could have hung with the big boys, could have maybe played for a national championship, and yet it all unraveled over the course of a bizarre 3-week stretch right there after the bye week in the middle portion of the season. And I don't know, again, maybe they're back to their bad habits against BYU next weekend, and it's the same team that we just saw lose 2 consecutive games. But it feels to me like this is truly a really good football team that's capable of playing with anybody in the country. I don't know about beating anybody in the country, but playing with anybody in the country when they're firing on all cylinders, that was not only not firing on all cylinders, but in fact firing on 0 cylinders for 3 weeks somehow. And it's just baffling. It's even more baffling now than it was then, because you see them come out and just trample this Mountaineers team on both sides of the ball tonight, leave absolutely no doubt. And that's not a bad football team. Like, West Virginia, guys, is a Hail Mary at Houston away from coming into Norman this weekend at 7-2. That's not a bad football team that they just blew the doors off.
They were 6-3. Yeah.
And tied for first place in the Big 12 coming into this, because they would have only had 1 conference loss at that time.
That's something that is going to get completely overlooked because that's not the reality of the situation. But if you're an Oklahoma fan, and I think, I was watching college football final earlier, and they brought up the same question, like, what is this Oklahoma team? Like, they're so good when they're good. Like, they're good, really, really, really good. And then they just lay a clunker, and they barely lose, but they lose. And they make so many mistakes that allow themselves to lose. And that right there, I think, is what's going, when fans look back, they're going to say this was the most unlucky, mistake-driven 2-loss team in OU history, potentially. When you go back and you look at everything. And granted, they probably should be 9-1 right now. They should be 10. They should be 10-0. Like, let's just call it what it is. They should be 10-0, but they jacked around. But they're not. That's the problem. They're not. And we're talking about all these what ifs, but we're talking about all these what ifs because of what we saw tonight. And that's what this team could be. And if they do win out, I want to ask you this. They win out. They play for the Big 12 title. Even if they don't play, how do you think nationally people view this team going into a 10-2 team? Are they going to get a New Year's Six Bowl, or are they going to go play USC in the Alamo Bowl?
I think an interesting question is, which would you prefer?
You want to know my answer?
The Alamo Bowl might be the most watched bowl game of the year, regardless of what the records of those two teams going in.
Correct.
If it was OU, USC,
I choose the Alamo Bowl. Yeah.
I mean, it would be incredible. To answer your question, Brandon, I think it depends on how they win those games. If they win convincingly like they did tonight, I do think the narrative is this team found its mojo again and is a top 10 football team.
So where are they ranked? There's
a lot of guys
tomorrow in playoffs. Where are they ranked?
On this week, I'll say so they'll move up 2 because Kansas and Oklahoma State both lost ahead of them at least.
Tennessee lost as well.
Okay, so they're then
I'm going to say 13.
13. 13. Which is crazy to think about. I mean, this team is just a roller coaster, man. It's incredible.
If they win out, are they a top 10 team at the end of the year?
Yes, of course.
Yep.
Going into the bowl game, they're ranked top 10 playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
If they win the Big 12, they're probably like a 7 or 8, probably.
6, 7, 8, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, all right. Let's wrap this up.
I think at that point they're off-season darlings too, because
100%.
the national media will look back on that Oklahoma season and go, they'll kind of express a lot of the same sentiments I just shared, which is, well, how the heck did they screw that up? And how is that replicable? It's probably not. This is a team we should be on the lookout for heading into 2024, especially with Jackson Arnold taking the reins at quarterback. So I think OU has an opportunity not only to really cement their status as a team to watch heading into 2024, but I mean, especially with Oklahoma State losing a day, again, the path isn't clear. Still need a little bit of help, but you can get to the Big 12 championship game, and that feels a little bit more realistic. Bit more realistic than it did a week ago.
Well, so you said something before we end this and just pick our offense and defense players of the games and then move on here. You said something about the darlings and is that season replicable? And it's probably not, because they can't screw it up like that again. That's exactly what we said going into this year. Like, there's no way they could lose 4 games by 3 points again. There's no way they could lose 5 games in a row by a single score. Like that's not possible. And we were right. But they can lose 2 by a single score.
2's all it takes.
And the funny thing is, though, is that you're seeing these progressions with Venables teams. Like last year it was 7 games. This year potentially 2, maybe 3 games they lose. Okay, I think as you're an Oklahoma fan, you take that and you look at it and you go, okay, that's a big step. What's the next step? Yeah, you're going to have a tougher schedule next year, but your roster is going to be so much better and so much deeper. Each year that Venables has been here, the roster looks so much better. And one you look at and you go, okay, yeah, they can compete at a way different level than Muleshoe's teams could. And by the way, OU fans, aren't you glad you're not them right now? They are rough. I feel bad for them. I feel bad for Caleb more than I do anything else, because he plays and tries so hard. But Riley is screwing the pooch out there. Is he on the hot seat?
He's not on the hot seat.
You don't think so?
He's making way too much
if they
money.
are
And it's way
7-5, he's not going to be in the hot seat.
No, he
I don't
won't.
think so.
Okay.
Whether
Okay,
he
anyways.
should is a different conversation. But
Yeah,
no,
that's a whole. Yep, that's a whole other deal. All right, players of the game on offense, defense. You can cherry pick whatever you want. There's plenty to choose from on the offense. There isn't really a wrong answer. Dylan's the obvious answer, but I'll let you guys pick and just go.
Bryan, you can have first choice.
I'll take the guy that had 8 touchdowns. I mean,
That's understandable.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel's offensive
Weak.
player for me. Yeah, that's easy. Defensive player of the game. I mean, Danny Stutzman coming back was huge, but you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb here. I just want to give the guys flowers. Jacoby Johnson locked up the game. I know it was out of hand already. Oh, Brady.
That's a Mustang, dude, Bryan. You got to realize.
Go ahead, take him.
Excuse me. I said Danny Stutzman, who led the team with 8 tackles and 2 tackles.
Take him. Take Jacoby.
Jacoby, it was cool to see him finally break through and get a play. So I'll leave it at that. I'll let you expound upon that.
No, he's just a Mustang guy. That's my guy. Mustang Broncos in the house. I'm originally from Piedmont, folks, but my kids play Mustang. We live in Mustang. We're Broncos through and through here in this house. So always happy about Jacoby Johnson. Who's your offensive guy? You said Dylan, right?
Yeah.
So you got Dylan and Jacoby.
Yeah.
Parker, who you got?
Drake Stoops on offense. I mean, if it's not Dylan, it's almost got to be Drake Stoops, right? 3 touchdown catches, double-digit receptions for the second straight week, and a career high in receiving yards. You tip your cap to that man because, I mean, I had a little fun earlier. I punched in Drake Stoops to my Twitter history just to see any and all tweets that I've sent with Drake Stoops' name in them. And the vast majority of them, and it goes back to like 2019, quotes about what a hard worker, what a tough-nosed individual Drake Stoops is, from anybody and everybody, from Brent Venables to Spencer Rattler, talking about that dude and just his character and his work ethic and who he is as a football player and as a person. So I love this for Drake Stoops. I love seeing the way that he has exploded onto the scene, even more so than he already was over the last couple of weeks. And he's my MVP tonight. On the defensive side of the ball, and I mentioned him earlier, he was everywhere once again. I got to go with Kip Lewis.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to cheat just because I can. There's no rules to this game. And I'm going to say I'm going to go with the 2 S's as my player in parentheses S's, players of the game. And I'm going to say Gavin Sawchuk and Austin Stogner. You got to give Stogner his flowers. The dude, 4 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown. Nice. They finally used it, and he made big plays. Like there was a couple of 3rd down plays that he caught a pass that were critical. I think he got a 4th down pass as well, and critical moment. And he made big plays when big plays were needed, and he could have had 2, possibly 3 touchdowns if Dylan had found him and thrown a good pass on a couple other passes. So, a couple of the targets, excuse me. So, yeah, I'm going to go with that. And then obviously Gavin Sawchuk, my guy. My goodness, man. 2 weeks in a row, he's breaking his own career highs. Obviously tonight, 138 yards, 22 carries, averaging 6.1 yards a carry. He didn't get in the end zone. That's all right. But he's changing the offense. I think those 2 I just named are the guys that are changing the offense more than anything, in my opinion, right now, at least helping the offense become more balanced. And then obviously I'm going to go with, you didn't take Danny, did you? I'm going to say Danny Stutzman then. 8 tackles, 2 tackles for losses. But the most important thing is when he came in and he came back healthy, and when he's on the field, that defense is just different. They line up correctly. The mistakes are far less. The bust assignments, far less. Like, they do what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it and how they're supposed to do it. And they play with a certain intensity when he's out there too, and a mental edge. And I think that is key in what makes Oklahoma's defense that much better than what it used to be, is because of Danny Stutzman and what he brings to the table. You got to hope that Kip Lewis, when Danny Stutzman decides to leave, whether it's after this year or next year, he picks up on that. Kanik picks up on that. Kobe McKenzie picks up on that. Lewis Carter. And they can be what Oklahoma needs them to be to carry that front seven, right? And get people lined up where they're supposed to be lined up, and how and to play with the edge that they're supposed to play with on that side of the ball for Brent Venables, because I think that's what makes his defenses great. And Stutzman's doing that, and he's doing it at an elite level. Just a shame he's not a Butkus semifinalist. And I'll leave it at that. But that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider under the Visor Sooners postgame podcast. Oklahoma won once again, 59-20 over West Virginia. They're now 8-2. If you're not on OU Insider, go subscribe now. We've got some nuggets dropped down there as far as team stuff, as far as recruiting stuff that you'll want to see. And they're only behind a paywall. I'm sorry. That's the way the world works. That's how we provide for our families. And our members, the thousands and thousands and thousands of them, are always ahead. So if you sign up right now, it is November 10th, right? Or 11th, November 11th, excuse me. November 11th, 2023. If you sign up right now, or you sign up November 12th or 13th, you'll get it all the way to 2024 if you get the whole year. And that's $99.95. That's almost the whole SEC season, which means you got the National Signing Day coming up. You get the rest of the Big 12 season, National Signing Day, both of them, all the transfer portals, the bowl game, the spring, all the junior days, the Party in the Palace, the Champion Barbecue, the fall camp, all the official visits in the summer, all the 25 commitments that are going to be happening, the 26 stuff that's going to start happening. You'll be in on everything. Plus, you'll have the transfer stuff, the 2024 class as it closes out, and you'll get to start and be ahead of the game as far as the SEC introduction that Oklahoma is going to be on. And we will take you for a ride as we cover everything. And we got basketball, man. Our dude Brody Lusk is killing it with inside information on basketball. We actually thanked today, Parker, by a member at the tailgate, walked up and said, "Thank you all so much for hiring Brody Lusk. He has been a godsend covering basketball and bringing insider intel to OU Insider." And we're going to have that for softball and baseball as well. You won't find any better coverage than you will on OU Insider. So come join us and the thousands and thousands and thousands of members there. Also, give us a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're almost to 14,000, I believe. We would love to have you guys on board with us as we continue to grow our multimedia department as well. So join us there on the podcast, like, subscribe, all that. Again, OU wins 59-20 over West Virginia. They're 8-2. They play BYU in a breakfast game next week in Provo, Utah. For Parker Thune, for Bryan Clinton, my name is Brandon Drum. We'll see you guys later.